If you guys are just coming in, this is going to be our third part of our five-part series on how to trade volume profile. If you guys are watching this in the VOD form, make sure to go back and watch the part 1 and part 2. And then also make sure to go back and watch the how to trade volume profile video. All right, we're going to get started. So today is going to be probably a lot less complicated than yesterday. Yesterday we covered a lot on SPY, Qs, Bitcoin. I basically went throughout the entire day of all three of them. We're going to do the same thing today, but there just really wasn't a whole lot of action today. Today there was an FOMC meeting at 2 o'clock, and then we also have an FOMC press conference at 2:30. So typically when those meetings happen, the day is going to be pretty balanced. You're not going to see a whole lot of action until the meeting. That's basically what happened today. We had a pretty much perfect balanced profile all the way up until the meeting, and then we saw a lot of action, which was right around here. You could see that it went down a lot, and then it popped up, and then it tried to go for that gap fill. But for the rest of the day before that, didn't really do anything. But I'm gonna give you guys a few little screenshots here. We're gonna go over a few things that I noted throughout the day, but it's gonna be very quick. So let's get started with SPY. All right, here we go. So the first screenshot of the day, this was finding the initial balance. So by now, hopefully you guys understand how to find the initial balance. We've gone over it throughout all the videos. So this would be the initial balance low. That's the POC, and then that's the high. So it was slightly bullish. You formed the initial balance, but then we were trading outside of it pretty much right away. So it was slightly bullish, and we were going to see weakness if it lost like 438. Anything above 439 was bullish, and basically your overall target would have been the gap fill. Okay, so let's keep going with SPY. Next up on SPY, you had a pullback down to the POC. So this kind of shows you that today was starting to be balanced, right? So the balance profile will have a D shape, and you are safe to sell the highs and safe to buy the lows, right? So this pulling back to POC immediately was your first sign that today wanted to be balanced, okay? Let's keep going. So then SPY started to bounce off the POC. So this was actually quite bullish, because if the day was balanced, you would actually fall down a little bit lower. So you'd start to see a little bit of a sell pressure down towards 438, and then kind of retest the low of the day. And that would give you more of the balanced shape. But because this bounced a little early, this started to bounce around the POC, this started to develop a node towards the high. So this node started to build up pretty quickly. So now today's profile looked more like a capital B than a capital D, right? The capital D would be the balanced profile. So the capital B shape is kind of giving you those two major nodes and then some gaps in the middle, all right? So because that bounced early, this is creating more of a B shape instead of being balanced. So when that happened, you want to pay attention to this node that started to build here. And if we can start to bounce off of that node, then the day is very bullish. And that will start to form more of a P shape, where you have most of the volume towards the high and then only a little bit of volume towards the lows. Okay, so let's keep going. So then we had a little bit of consolidation, and kind of almost exactly what I said happened. Because you traded so heavily towards the highs, you actually shifted your POC back up towards the high day. So this creates this like big node towards the top, but it's not that much farther towards the top, so I would not call this a P shape. You would need to have some more volume down here in order to call this a P-shaped profile. This is more of a balanced profile. It just has an imbalance towards the high. So this is just a slightly bullish imbalanced profile, okay? So when we start to see this build on the POC, this is like your major point of focus. You want to pay attention to that node, because if you start to bounce off of that node, like for example, if price started to bounce like you see these wicks, and then it came back down to retest it, and then it started to bounce, that is very bullish. So however it reacts to that node, that's how the day is going to go, right? If it bounces off that node, you're going to be very bullish. If it rejects the node, you're typically going to be very bearish. Okay, so you can see it starts to consolidate here, and then it starts to pull away from that node. So when you start to pull away from that node, that's your first sign that it's getting a little bearish. It's not completely bearish. It's just trying to fill in the imbalance towards the low. Because if it fills in this section, then it will look like a perfectly balanced profile. Like we talked about yesterday in part 2, when you have those gaps in between two major nodes, it tries to fill in those gaps because then it creates a balanced, efficient market, okay? So it's trying to come down and fill this gap in, and you're slightly losing the value area low, so a little bit of weakness. All right, let's keep going. So then we have the loss of the value area low, the loss of the gap. So this starts to show you that it's kind of bearish here. This is the, if you guys remember from the first screenshot, that is the initial balance low. So the first hour of the day, that gives you the value area low, and now that is acting as kind of your target off of that pullback, and it's also acting as a slight support here moving forward, okay? So if I was looking at this profile, I would see like, okay, this is some support from the initial balance, and then we have this big node right here that we need to reclaim if we want to be very bullish, okay? So until it reclaims this node, I wouldn't be too bullish. Now, it is almost perfectly balanced, so you can buy the lows and sell the highs, but with the FOMC meeting today, that is something to worry about, and if it gets closer to that meeting, you probably don't want to trade, right? It's a fundamental thing that should stop you from taking most of your trades, because the FOMC meetings are basically like coin flips. The market just goes crazy when those meetings happen. So like if we were looking at today and there wasn't a meeting, then yes, you could buy the lows, sell the highs, and not have to worry about it. But with that meeting, probably weren't trading too much today. So then we have the FOMC meeting, and you can see it just goes wild with that meeting. So we have the massive wick down, but then look what it does to the profile. It actually gives you some single prints. So all these down here are single prints because you came down to test it, but then you immediately bounced. You did not trade down there at all. So that was your first sign that it was starting to get very bullish. Single prints, when they happen on wicks like this, they are either very bullish or very bearish. If it happens on a high, it's very bearish. When it happens on a low, it's very bullish, right? So when these single prints came in, this is very indicative that price wants to go higher, okay? So then you would just target the same things that we've been targeting throughout the week: your value area low, your POC, and your value area high, okay? If you did take that single print trade. And then my last update on the day was this little breakout that we saw here. So you had that single print come in, you bounced up, you broke the value area low, which was your first target, you tested the POC, a little bit of weakness on the POC, but then we broke through it. So pretty bullish there. Not really a whole lot to cover today. Like I said, it was only a few screenshots. But throughout the day, you can kind of see how a balanced profile can give you multiple trading opportunities. It just has to be in the right instances, right? If there's like an FOMC meeting, you probably would have taken those trades. But if we pretend like there wasn't a meeting today, you had a couple of trades there. You had a single print trade, you had a balanced trade towards the high, a balanced trade towards the low, which you could have taken off the initial balance. So you probably had like maybe 3 trades today off volume profile, maybe 4 if you were forcing it. But even on days like today where nothing really happens, you could still have a few trading opportunities. So I have a few things to go over with Qs, and then we'll do like a live recap. So here is the initial balance on Qs. This one is a little bit more bullish. So we have the initial balance down here with the low and the POC, and then we have the high up here. So we're pushing off the high right when we form it. So that is quite bullish. But one thing to note is if we look at yesterday's volume profile, we can see that this resistance node that was forming up here is actually acting as resistance moving forward. So what I'm going to go over today is kind of how you guys can use your previous profiles in your analysis for the current day. Okay, so let me finish going over Qs, and then we'll start talking about that. So the next thing that happened on Qs was that node acted as resistance. You started to build a node on the current day, right around that same node from yesterday. So this is clearly resistance. And then we pulled back to retest the value area high. So if you started to bounce here, which it did, if it actually maintained this bounce, this would be extremely bullish. Okay, if it maintained this bounce, you very likely would break the high of the day very quickly. Okay, and then if you started to lose this node, so kind of right below where these candles stopped, then you would be looking for a retest of the POC and the low, because there's not really any support nodes in between here and there. Okay, so let's keep going, see what happens next. So then we bounce off the value area high, but then look at the POC. So we have the POC way down here. This is the value area high, and then this is outside the value area. Look at what happens here. So then we bounce, and then it shifts your value area towards the high of the day. It also shifts your POC, right? This little node right here that started to build actually became the point of control and the value area towards the high. So it is very bullish. Now, if it maintains above the POC, this would be extremely bullish, and you most likely would begin to push out and form an upper tail. Okay? If it can hold above 367.50, you'll start to see that upper tail start to form, and that would be extremely bullish. And then moving forward, if you wanted to breakout trade that, you could, but let's say it pulled back for a retest. If you break out of the POC right after you shifted it towards the high, and then you retest it as support, that is extremely indicative of a bullish breakout. That is showing you that price wants to push higher. Okay, so let's keep going with Qs. So right here, you did not break out of the POC. So when you shift the POC here, you actually start failing the POC. So that's a little bit of weakness. Now this is still slightly bullish because you kind of have that bull flag. You pop up, and then you put in a little bull flag here. So it's still slightly bullish. But when you start to fail the POC like that, it's showing you that there's still weakness, and the buyers are not ready to push that higher. Okay? I've got a few more screenshots here. So then, okay, you see how we started like this. We shifted the POC higher. It tried to go for that breakout. Couldn't break POC. Little bit of a pullback off the POC, and then now we have like the full-on rejection. Okay, so because we shifted the value area high, or sorry, the value area low higher, this is now support. So if this wants to be very bullish, it has to hold above that value area low. Okay, so then we have the bounce here. Let me get rid of some of these older screenshots. So we pull off POC, bearish price action here, but then we start to reclaim bouncing off the value area low. So as long as that value area low holds, this is still slightly bullish. And then we reclaim the support node here, so that looks even more bullish. Let's keep going. So this actually acted as a fake out, and then look at what it did. It shifted the POC down. Value area low still remains the same, so this is slightly bullish. But as long as it holds the value area low, it is still okay to go higher. So right here, it hasn't really given you any trades, except for like if you took the value area low test down here. Besides that, it really hasn't given you too many trades today. So right here, when you're seeing this, you could take this from like selling the POC down to the value area low, but that's like if you're scalping very, very small moves. If you're looking for decent sized moves, it really hasn't given you too many trades today. But let's see how this plays out. Okay, so now you start to lose the value area low. So this is a lot of weakness here. So you lost the POC, you shifted the POC lower, and then now you're losing the value area low. So this becomes weak, and we have a lot of support down here at 363.59 and 363.27. So if you are looking for the bullish trade here, you want to be looking at these lower levels to act as support, so you could buy them and then push that back towards the POC. Like I said, you could take these bearish trades, but these are very, very short scalp trades. These are not high probability trades here. So once again, it's still not giving you that many trades. But if it did nuke down here and come down to like the 363.50 area, then that would be giving you a trade. Let's see if it does that. Okay, so then we have the FOMC meeting on Qs, and it almost gives you that trade. So if you were watching this live, you probably could have hopped in early, but if you had your limits here, you would have missed the trade. So it really depends on how you would have traded that live. I'm not going to tell you one way or the other. It's really up to it's up to you, right? When you were watching that live, it's really up to how you would execute that trade. But if you were putting in limits and you're somebody who doesn't like to remove your orders and get in early, you would have missed that trade. If you put in limits, but then you saw it start to come down and then start to bounce, you could have hopped in there. One thing I will tell you with the volume profile that could have told you to hop in is when you reclaim the value area low. So when the value area low has been lost, but then reclaimed, what did I tell you guys yesterday? So let me pull this up on the chart and it'll be easier to understand. Where is the developing value area? Let's see. There we go. Okay, so this blue line here is where the value area was during that FOMC meeting. So yesterday, I told you guys, when you're looking for trades outside the value area low, if it's very close to the value area low, you don't want to take the trade as a limit, like put your limits down here. You want to wait for a retrace into the value area. Okay, so when it pulled down here and then it retraced back inside, that was a trading opportunity. So that is like, there's probably a trade back here, but this is basically the best trade of the day. So if you were watching this throughout the day, just waiting on a really good volume profile trade, that was probably the best trade of the day. Because you could have taken the retrace of the value area, and then like I always tell you guys, you target the POC, you target the value area high. So you would have gotten both your targets, and you had no drawdown. Okay, so being patient is very key with volume profile trading, because basically throughout the whole day, you might have gotten one, maybe two little scalps, but this trade was the best trade of the day. So you would have gotten a nice trade if you would have waited. Let me go back to our screenshots. I think that's actually all of them. I've got one left here. Oh, no, that's the last one. Okay. Yeah, so we just had the value area low test, and then we pop back into the POC. And then I also noted there's a gap right here. There's a gap around 366.50. So I said in Discord, if you broke the POC, you would be looking for that gap. And then if you break the gap, you're looking for 368. Okay, let's get rid of these, and then we'll go over some examples with the chart. So we're actually testing that gap. So look at that gap now. Let me actually pull that up one more time. You see how that gap is? It's pretty noticeable. There's not really a lot of volume there. But then look at that gap right here. You're filling in. You've almost completely filled in that gap. So that level is very important moving forward. If we fill in that node, this could create more of a balanced shape here on the profile, but you would still be bullishly balanced. Okay. All right, so that was a lot. Let me go ahead and delete this. And I want to talk about something today with how you can use the previous volume profile levels in your trading. All right. So let's start with Qs. Let's go back. Where's our replay? Let's go to the start of the day here. Okay, so let's let it play like for a few candles. All right, so here's our open. So what did I tell you guys yesterday? You don't typically trade the first hour of the day, because when you're volume profile trading, there is no profile. You're starting a new profile on every day. So you want to wait for at least the first hour to go through so you can have somewhat of a profile to base your trades off of. Now, there are exceptions to that. If you want to trade within the first hour of the day, you should be using your previous volume profiles of the previous days to give you that bias, okay? So if this is the open of the day, I can go ahead and I can grab the value area low, or sorry, the value area high, excuse me, of yesterday, the value area low of yesterday, and then we can take the POC as well, okay? So just like how we take the initial balance on the first hour of the day, we can do that same thing with the closed profile of the previous day. And if you want to, you could go back and do this for a few days. So like we could take this day as well. And then we can take this day as well if we wanted to. Obviously, the more days you take here, it's going to get very messy on your chart. So make sure you want to color code these so you at least know what you're looking at. All right. So that's just 3 days. And look at how messy my chart is. That's one downside to this trading style, like I said. But okay, so now that we're looking at our previous days volume profiles, I should say, we have some levels that we can focus on. Okay, so we don't want to trade the first hour of the day with the current profile because there is no profile. There's no levels for us to use. But if today opened like this, what are we gonna say, right? What's our bias gonna be if we gapped up, but then we failed a previous value area low? How would that make you guys feel? Would you be bullish or would you be bearish? That would probably make you guys feel bearish, right? So if we gapped up on the open, but then we immediately failed a previous value area low, that shows you that there's resistance right here. This is weakness, okay? So if you're looking to trade the open, I would be looking for shorts. I would not be looking for longs. There's nothing bullish about failing a value area low. Okay. Now on another note, if we started to bounce off this level here, which is the previous value area high, then I would be looking for longs. That would be something that makes me bullish. Okay. And then if we came down and did something like this, I would be very bearish. Because what did I tell you guys before? There is an 80% trade that happens when you open outside your previous day's profile, but then you retrace inside that profile. So if you opened like this, and then you retraced inside the profile and started to find some value inside that previous value range, you have an 80% chance to go to the entire length of that value zone. Okay, so like if we started to hang out right here, we would have an 80% chance to go down and test 360.83. Okay, so that's a few trades that it could have given you. You could have shorted the retest of the value area low there. You could long if it starts to bounce off the value area high there, or you could short if it starts to find value inside this range. Those are all three high probability volume profile trades. All right, so let's let this play out a little bit. Okay, so notice how you tried to find value here, but it did not stay in that zone. So if you were being very aggressive and you saw this break into this value area and you know about that 80% trade, yes, you could have gotten faked out on that. It's all about kind of how you execute that trade. Like I talked about yesterday, finding these levels is the easiest part about volume profile trading. The hardest part is how you execute the levels. Okay, so yes, you could have gotten faked out on that trade and you would have lost that trade if you would have taken it immediately. If you're someone who likes to be patient and you like to see some more confirmation, you would not have taken that trade. So it's all about kind of who you are as a trader. Now, when I take these style of trades, the 80% trades, I like to typically see at least a 15-minute close or a 30-minute close inside that value range. So did it give us that? gave us a 50-minute close, but then if you would have waited for the open and immediately retraced, what about a 30-minute close? 30-minute close it did not give us. Okay, so if you're using the 15-minute or 30-minute technique, you probably would not have taken that trade. If you were using the 5-minute technique, you might have taken that trade, and then you would have lost that trade. But it gave you another trade. What did I say before? The retrace, right? So this would be the same idea of going down and then losing a value area low and then retracing back above it. That would give you a trade when it re-enters that area, okay? This is the same thing. If you come back to retest a previous day's value area high and then you lose it, but then you quickly reclaim it, that is the same technique. You could have longed that as a re-entry, okay? And then you would have been targeting either the current day's levels, like the value area high, the POC, if they're already in place. So if you have your initial balance already in place, that's what you're targeting. If your initial balance is not in place already, you will have to use the previous levels, okay? So the only previous level that we have is this value area low or this node right here. Everything else, there's not really anything there to target. So we would have either targeted the node or we would have targeted the value area low. Okay? So let's let it play some more. What time is it actually? Do we have our initial balance yet? So we're about to have our initial balance. Okay, so now it's 10:30. So what we can do is we can grab our initial balance like we always do. And I'm gonna color code this so it doesn't get so ridiculous. We'll make these red. So we have the value area low, the value area high, and then we have the POC. Okay, so let's delete that. All right, so now we have our initial balance on the day, and then we also have a lot of levels from our previous days. Okay, so we have a lot of information that we can use moving forward on the day. So if I'm looking at this current profile, like I already went over on earlier in this video, this is slightly bullish because you are outside your initial balance. You are breaking the value area low of this previous day here, and then you're retesting the value area high of this day here. So this is pretty bullish. Now, if I was looking for some trades, we would just look for what we typically do. Retest of major levels, or building nodes here, and then holding those nodes as support, right? So if I built a node here, started to use it as support, that would give you an indication that it wants to break out higher. Or if it pulls back to retest major support levels, and then you start to bounce off those levels, that also indicates that it wants to go higher, okay? Let's let it play a little bit. All right, so we start to bounce off these previous levels. So like I was saying earlier, you could take these trades. They're just very, very small trades. There's nothing too major today. You could have taken that retest of the initial balance high as a little scalping point, and then you would have just targeted the node or the high of the day, because there is no value area high up here. There is no POC up here. Those are the only things that we can target, okay? Now, if I was watching this trade like live, what I probably would have targeted would be this node right here, because we have the previous day giving us this really beautiful node that is clearly acting as resistance. So if we got a very clean entry on that retest, that's what I would target the node. And then if you want to be a little greedy, you would wait to see if that node gets flipped. So like if we started to do something like this, and then you could target the levels that are higher than that. Okay? Let's let it go for a little bit, see what happens. Okay, so notice that it does not like that node. So if you took that trade and you got a really good entry, you could have taken profit on the node. Most likely you would not have taken full profit. You probably would have just taken partial profit, and you would have been a little greedy with the rest of your stack. But then as soon as it starts to push off the POC, like push off of that node as resistance, and one of the key things to look for when you're kind of determining if price is using these nodes as support or resistance is look at the node And you see how the node, can I zoom in here, make it a little more obvious? Let's see. You see where the node starts to, where's my arrow? It starts to fall off. You see how the node starts to fall off? So when I draw these like boxes right here, this is just like me collecting the entire node. But understand that the volume starts to fall off towards the lows and towards the highs. So when you're looking at price and you're like, okay, is it losing the node or is it using the node as support? When it starts to push where the volume is falling off, that is it gaining the node or losing the node. So I'm trying to make this as clear as possible. Let me delete this. And we'll grab like, say like this level here, and then say like that level there. So that is clearly where the node is starting to fall off, right? There's no volume towards that upper side or towards that lower side. So when price starts to reclaim that upper side, it's gaining that node. It's using this node as support. If it starts to lose that lower side, it's using that node as resistance. Now, the clearest way that I could say this is when the majority of the node is below price, it's gaining the node as support. When the majority of the node is above price, it's gaining the node as resistance. Okay, that's the clearest way that I could put it. And it sounds complicated, but just with some time, when you guys watch how price reacts to these nodes, you'll start to understand exactly what I'm talking about. So clearly, this is losing the node. The majority of the node is above price. So when we start to push off of it, and the majority of that node is still above us, that is weakness. This is resistance moving forward. Okay, so let's let it play out a little bit. Okay, so this is resistance. Now we're pulling back to retest the same exact level that we might have longed earlier. Now, like I said, if you're like a super scalper, like you're somebody who doesn't mind these tiny little trades, once again, you could take this trade, but this is not a very big trade. The problem with this trade is something that we went over in part 1 and part 2. The value area low is quite far away from where you're entering. So, like if you entered here off the initial balance high, you would have to be okay with seeing a drawdown all the way down to the value area low. And if you're okay with this drawdown, let's see, how much is that? That's like an 80-cent drawdown. Where is your target going to be? Our target's like $1.10 away. That's not a very good R to R, right? So if you're okay with that drawdown, your target is not giving you a very good R to R. So that better be a very high probability trade if your R to R is not very good. And this trade is not the greatest. It's not the highest probability trade. So once again, probably not the greatest trade to take. But if you're a big scalper, that is a possible trade. So you would look for POC as your target, and then you would look for most likely the high of day or the previous levels as your target. And then stop loss would be somewhere below the value area low. Let's let it play out a little bit. Still not really giving you any trades. Just consolidating on POC. So right here, you're actually coming to test that value area low. So like I said earlier, if you took that trade, where was it? It was like up here. You're now underwater. You didn't really get your target, and now it is going for that value area low test. Okay, so if you were being like that scalper, you would be underwater. Most likely you're going to get stopped out. And if you were being patient, looking for the higher probability trades, we would be waiting for this to lose the value area low and then reclaim it, or we would be looking for some test of the levels that are far outside the value area low. Okay, so going back to something that I said yesterday, this area right here, you would not be limiting. You do not limit this area. Like, you don't put in limit buys. It's too close to the value area low. you want to be able to watch price and see if it's going to find support before going higher. You don't want to limit that. But if you are far outside the value area low, so like these levels here, these are safe to limit. You could put limits down here. Okay. Let's let it play out some more. Okay, so if you took that trade up here, you got stopped out. So you would have lost that trade. If you're somebody who's looking for a retrace of the value area low, this might have given you an entry. This is not really good enough because you immediately got rejected. But if it gave us another bounce here, that would be good enough for a trade. Let's see if it does. Okay, so it didn't give you another bounce until you lost the level. But even if you took this here, you probably wouldn't have got stopped out, depending on how tight your stop loss was. But this would have given you a beautiful trade on the retrace of the value area low, or if you put your limits down on those wicks. So what did I say earlier? Let's go back. I'm going to delete everything. Let's just delete everything here. Let me really show you guys the point that I'm trying to make. So like this would be the current value area low. This would be a nice little support node. And then this would be another support node. Okay. So this area right here is so close to the value area low. You do not want to limit this. So let me make this like red. Like this is an area that you do not want to limit. Right? No limits here. You're okay to limit down here because it's far enough away from the value area low. You are okay to also buy a retrace of the value area low. So this is okay. Let's see how price plays out. Okay, so if you had your limits here, you would have got filled. Very beautiful entry. If you had your limits down here, you would have barely missed it. So that would have sucked. But limits there, you would have been okay. And then if you're looking for the retrace, you would have been okay. So there's two entries here. That entry and this entry. And then you would have been targeting, once again, the POC and the value area high. So let's see if you get your targets. There's the POC. So if you got in up here, your target would have been very, very close. You would not have gotten that much of a gain. If you got in down here, that was best trade of the day. Best possible trade of the day. There was not a better trade. You would have got your first target beautifully. And now we're looking for our second target. Let's see if it gets hit. And always remember, guys, the value area is going to be constantly shifting. So like when you enter your trade, let's say we entered down here and we marked our value area high. And then let's say the value area high shifts to like up here. You want to be focusing on the value area high when you entered your trade. Okay. Now, if you want to be greedy and the value area high shifted higher, then yes, you could go for that value area high. But same thing is said for the downside. If the value area high shifts lower, this could act as resistance. So you have to understand that we are going for the value area high when we took the trade, but when it shifts, it's going to alter our trade a little bit. Okay, so just pay attention to the value area throughout your trade. Okay, so this is kind of a key point that I was trying to make. This was our value area high when we took the trade. We just barely missed it. But if we take our current value area high, we got that trade. So just make sure you're paying attention to the value area high or whatever value area based on the trade you took, right? Value area high or low. Make sure you're paying attention to the one where you took the trade and the current one. Okay? It's going to shift a little bit. So if it started to fail off the current value area high, we probably want to take profit, right? We don't want to be a little greedy for, what, 20 cents. All right. But I'm going to leave this here and see if we get our full trade. Let's see. Almost there. I think we're live. Are we live? Oh, we're actually live now. Okay, so let's get rid of this. So we're actually live now. So we still don't know if we got our full trade yet. And actually look at this. So now the value area has shifted a little higher. But we're going to leave it where we hypothetically are targeting. So hypothetically, throughout the entire day, I showed you guys a few examples of small trades that you could have taken. But this by far was the best trade of the day. This was the second best trade of the day, where you had that retrace of the value area. Okay. So now moving forward with the live data, we are technically, like hypothetically speaking, we're still in a long. We took profit here. We could have taken profit here and closed our trade. But if you were like setting your profit in stone and then walking away from the computer, we're still in that trade. We had little to no drawdown. Yeah. So either this trade or this trade, you would take profit and then still be long looking for that level. All right, one thing I wanted to go over, if you guys haven't watched part 2, I highly recommend going back to watch that. We went crazy yesterday going over how you could have traded Bitcoin. And that level that I gave you guys, that very important level at 37.5, that acted as the exact bottom of this entire move. So I highly recommend watching part 2 if you have not. Obviously, if you guys are watching this live, just finish out this video and then go back and watch part 1 and part 2. But yeah, so this was all of our analysis yesterday. I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and we're going to start fresh. So, like I said, the main topic for today is kind of how to use your previous day's levels when you are starting fresh. So what we can do, we can grab the value area high here. We can grab the value area low. We can grab the POC. And then if we want to, we can also grab this day as well. Now, one thing that I typically do is if these days are like inside of each other, if these are overlapping days, I won't take all of the levels. Like if a lot of the levels overlap, I won't take all of them. These ones don't overlap too much, so I'd probably keep these. But like kind of how we did with Qs. Remember there was like 5 levels back to back? If that happens, I'll just delete the levels and I'll draw like a little zone there just to kind of remind me that there's a lot of resistance there or support. So if your chart gets a little messy and you have just a bunch of levels lined up next to each other, you can just delete the lines and put like a little a zone there. Okay. But all right, so we have the previous day's levels and the day before that's levels. So these are all the current levels that are relevant. So let's get started with the current day. So we start fresh here. Zoom in a little bit. We're gonna let it run for a little bit. Let's what time is it? It is at 20. Let's let it go for an hour, and then we will grab our initial balance. All right, here's the initial balance. Let's go ahead and grab that. What's going on, boss? Good to see you. All right, we have the high. Let me actually color these red so we don't get distracted. High, low, POC. And then get rid of this. We don't need that anymore. All right, so the current initial balance, I'd say, is pretty neutral. The price action is right around the POC of the initial balance. We're not seeing a whole lot of movement below or above it, so this would be fairly neutral. Let's let it go some more. Okay, so now we're starting to get a little bit of a warning that it wants to be very bullish, because if we zoom out, we are breaking the value area high of 2 days prior, and there's not really a whole lot of resistance up here above that level. Okay? So as long as we can hold above like 39.3, this is very bullish. Let's let it run some more. Okay, so let me actually go back a little bit. I paused it a little late. Let's slow this down. Okay, you see how this node is starting to form? We're starting to form a nice node right here. Pay attention to that. Let's speed this up a little bit. And then we bounced off of it, so very bullish. We're also forming a little bit of a node up here as well. So if we wanted to, we could make this bigger and kind of encapsulate the entire node. But I'm going to keep it kind of where we had it before. Okay, so once again, retesting the node as support. So now I'm actually going to move this because this node is becoming more relative than this one. So we're going to move this and kind of capture this node here. Okay, so this is kind of like your first warning sign that it's getting a little bearish. If it loses this node, then you're going to be looking for these previous levels of support to hold you up. Okay, big loss there. Okay, now we're retesting the node as resistance. Notice how that node has become the POC. So we have shifted the POC higher. So this was our original POC. Now it's way up here. So that is slightly bullish, but how we are reacting to that POC right now is a little bearish. Okay, so bullish day, but slightly bearish reaction. Let's let it go a little bit longer. Okay, so notice how it started to reclaim the POC. That's very bullish. When that happens, you want to look for the upper tail and the value area high. Okay, so watch the value area high here to see if it's going to give you some resistance. Okay, so then we lost the value area high, pulling back to POC. So now the levels you want to pay attention to are the POC, value area low, and then all of your previous levels that are acting as support. Are you guys starting to understand how easy this is? Like once you understand how to find these levels, it's just basic support and resistance trading. There's nothing complex about volume profile trading. Once you understand how to find the levels, it's just very simple support and resistance trading. So like the value area high, once we start to use that as resistance, what are we going to look for? We're going to look for the POC because it's support. What are we going to look for below that? We're going to look for the value area low and the previous levels. Okay, let's keep going. Nothing really happening here, just kind of hovering on POC. It is trying to lose the POC bearishly, but because the value area low is so close, I would not let that worry you. As long as it doesn't lose the value area low, it's still okay. Oh, another thing I want to note here is this is pretty much a balanced profile. We have a little bit of an imbalance down here, but for the most part, this profile is balanced. So if you were to come down and leave the value area low, but find support on your nodes outside the value area low, that would give you a trade back to the POC. Or, once again, if you lose the value area low but then reclaim it, that would also give you a trade back to the POC. All right, let's let it go. Still not really any trades happening, just kind of hovering around POC. I'm going to speed it up a little bit because nothing's really happening here. You see how beautifully, okay, that was a big candle. You see how beautifully balanced this is? It's perfectly balanced almost. There's just a slight imbalance here, and then we have a gap right here. So if it wanted to be perfectly balanced, like I always tell you guys throughout these part 1, part 2 videos, this is what the market wants to do. The market wants to be balanced. So when you're looking at the current day's profile, you want to always be imagining, how can this profile balance itself out? If this wants to balance itself out, what does it have to do? It has to fill in this area right here. Okay. So if it's on a balanced day where not a whole lot's happening, people are selling the highs and buying the lows, just make sure to ask yourself, what does it have to do to perfectly balance? All right, let's keep going. Okay, there's the nasty candle. What did I tell you guys earlier? If you lose the value area low, but then it finds support on your previous nodes, then that's a trade. If it loses the value area low and then it reclaims it, that's another trade. So the value area low is now right there. I'm going to get rid of this. So now the value area low is right here. I'm going to make this black so we can pay attention to it. So if it reclaims that level, that is a trade up to the POC or the value area high. Now, this trade here is a little weak because if you got the POC, that's like nothing. You're getting almost nothing from that trade. But if you did target the value area high, that could be a good trade. So in all honesty, if you took this trade, you probably wouldn't target the POC. You would only target the value area high. If you took this trade, you could target the POC. Okay? Because it's far enough away to give you a good R2R. All right? In all these little things that I'm saying, like, okay, sometimes you wouldn't target the POC, sometimes you would. Those are all intuitive things that you guys will learn on your own when you trade like this. Okay? It's very hard to teach. It's mainly intuition. But okay, let's keep going. Okay, so if you took that trade, you would have gotten your first target. If you took this trade and targeted the POC, you would have gotten the target, but it's just not, it's not a very good trade. If you took that higher trade and then targeted the POC, yes, it would have been a winning trade, but you wouldn't have been getting a very good risk to reward. So if you were in this trade, you would mainly be focusing on the value area high, which has now shifted to right here. So pay attention to that level. Okay, now we're getting weaker. It actually just gave you another trade. You had a support bounce and the reclaim. So either one of those, basically the same exact trade that you had back here, it just gave you the same exact trade. And once again, you got the POC. Nothing new here. Let's keep going. Okay, there we go. So here are another couple of intuitive things that you would have had to make the decision on. If you took this trade originally, you would have gotten your first target, no problem. But then you had this nasty pullback. So you would have had to make the decision, do I cut the rest of my trade or do I keep my target? And that's a hard call, so I can't really tell you exactly what you would have done. That's going to be completely up to you and how you trade it. What I will say is you probably would have been leaning towards cutting it because you lost the value area low so quickly. So that would have probably made you get out of the trade. But then again, if you're in a trade and you've already taken profit and it's pulling back to retest your entry, this is already a winning trade. So letting the rest ride is not extremely risky because you're only going to be in like at most half the trade. So like if that was like a, let's just say it was a 10 contract trade and then we sold 5 contracts at the POC, we're only in 5 contracts. So it's only half the risk. So that's really your call. And that's going to be something, like I said, you guys are going to have to learn as you're trading. But okay, so if you took that trade, your target was hit, target was hit. If you took this trade or this trade, target hit, target hit. So both the trades here, or actually all four of the trades, I should say, are winners, except for this one. If you took this trade, you didn't really get your target, and you probably would have got stopped out. So maybe 3 out of 4 were winners. But overall, today was fairly simple, level-wise. There wasn't really a whole lot of complex decisions you had to make. But all right, let's keep going. So actually, let's say, actually, no, we probably wouldn't be doing that. I was going to say, let's say we're looking for a short here, but we honestly probably would not be looking for a short up here. Unless it gave us like a nasty wick, and then it pulled back inside the value area high, I probably would not be looking to short this. Because there is no resistance above this level. Does that make sense? So like back here, there was support down here below the value area low. So it gave you those levels that you could use as a support to buy that trade. But this one's not giving you those nodes to sell. So you probably would not be looking for a short unless it did something like that. And there's no previous day levels. Okay, so the only exception is this one right here. We have this node right here, which I don't even think is high enough. Let's just put this to like 500. Yeah, so that's not even high enough. So this really can't, you can't really short this. You would have to look for a failure. But all right, let's keep going. Okay, so let me zoom in. This could have faked you out a little bit. So like this candle right here, you started to fail, or sorry, you started to break the value area high, and then you pulled back inside. So that could have faked you out, and you could have shorted that, but there was no confirmation. The next candle, it's always best to wait for the next candle and see how it plays out. So like you have that candle there that's kind of weak, but then your next candle is really bullish. So once again, it's kind of intuition. Depends on how you would have taken that trade. If you were extremely aggressive, you would have got faked out there. Let's keep going. That's actually a really big breakout. And there wasn't really any signs that you could have taken, unless you're a breakout trader. You could have taken the breakout of the value area high. I typically don't take those trades unless it pulls back to retest and then it bounces. So like it would have had to do something like this, and I would have taken that trade. That didn't really happen here. I guess maybe right here, but honestly, I probably would have missed that trade. That was too quick. Maybe if you bought the dragonfly there, maybe you could have bought the tweezer there, but like I said, in honesty, I probably would have missed that trade. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so one thing you want to note here is the node. We're building a new node. So we have a new node here. And now we're starting to fail that node. So that is clearly resistance. So what we want to pay attention to is the value area high. Let me get rid of this. Let's get rid of this as well. So there's our value area high. That's what we want to pay attention to. So if it pulls back to retest the value area high, and then it shows signs of support, that is very bullish. Then you could take that as a trade up to the node. Another instance, if you start to break the node, you could take that as a breakout trade, or you could look for kind of a consolidation above the node. That's also bullish. Those are the only trades right now. Nothing else really stands out. All right, let's keep going. Okay, So this is clearly resistance, all right? You see how it pulled back? Let's actually go back. I'm going to do this a little slower so you guys can see this happening. Watch how it reacts to this. Try to break out. You wick it. If you guys watched my how to trade pivots video, I talk about how that is a that is sell pressure. There's clearly sell pressure here. And then look, confirmation, failing it. Let's keep going. Still resistance, and then boom. Okay, so this shows you resistance, and then confirmation that the bears want to push it lower. And then boom, you have a massive candle down. So if you were watching this like a hawk, yes, you probably could have shorted this. For the most part, a lot of you guys are probably going to miss that trade, myself included. Unless you were watching that, literally watching every single candle form and close, you probably would have missed that. This trade is a little bit more easy to spot. It's easier to find. Because then, what are you doing? You're breaking the value area high. You're retracing inside of the value area high as resistance. Okay? So if you would have taken this trade here, targeting the POC, and you're targeting the value area low, which is now down here. Okay, so let's see if you get your targets. It looks like you're going to get your POC, maybe not your value area low. There's your POC target. Do you get the value area low? Let's see, you're so close. Oh, hold on, you're actually shifting it higher. So, like I said, pay attention to the shift. It's actually a little bullish here. It's bouncing a little early. Let's see if you're going to get it. You're very close. There you go. Okay. So you actually shifted your value area high, or sorry, value area low a little higher, and there's your target. So like I said, if you were like watching this like a hawk, yes, you might have been able to short the top. That would have been very hard to do. This is a lot easier, and then you would have gotten your first target and your second target. This is kind of a great example of you don't have to be perfect, right? Like you don't have to short the top to make money. If you would have seen this short there, you would have made money with no drawdown. Okay, so you don't have to be perfect. I know, once again, this is all hindsight. I know a lot of you guys who don't watch my channel and you're watching these VODs, you think this is just all hindsight. I have to do this for the videos. If you guys do this stuff live, I guarantee you, you will see improvement in your trading. I think we are... Okay, no, sorry, I thought we were live. I actually need to speed this up a little bit. This video is getting a little long. Let's do this a little faster. Okay, so once again, because our profile is almost fully balanced, you're still looking for... Let me actually... Let's just clean this up. Actually, no, we still need these levels. You're still looking for support outside the value area low to look for bids. Or you're looking for a failure and then a retrace. So we're still looking for longs here, right? That could have given you a long there, but that is that's not that clean. Like that's, you only lost the value area low for one candle, and then you retraced back inside of it. So that would be another scenario where, like, if you guys were like trying to scalp every single penny out of this move, then yes, you probably could have caught that trade. If you were if you were someone who liked to be very patient, you probably would not have gotten that trade. Okay, so let's keep going. Not a whole lot happening, just still balancing out. Make sure you're paying attention to the shift. So once again, we've shifted our value area. There's the value area high. Okay, that's actually a huge trade there. But once again, that would have to, you would have to be a very aggressive trader to catch that. So if you were extremely aggressive, you actually you're making a lot of money here, because this extremely aggressive trade would have paid you immediately, and then this extremely aggressive trade would have paid you immediately. I'm not that aggressive of a trader, so I would have missed both of those trades. What I mean by aggressive is like, you don't wait for any confirmation. You don't care about seeing multiple candles giving you like perfect patterns. You're just looking for buy the book, retraces and retest of levels, right? So like if you took that value area high, just buy the book to the exact penny, yes, you would have gotten a beautiful trade. If you were being a patient trader, you would have missed that trade. Myself included, I would have most likely missed that trade. But same thing as we've been going over. If you took that trade, POC, value area low, nothing changes. So there's another scalp there. And then honestly, you're about to have a long coming up. If it bounces here again, you could long the same exact thing. And then if it goes down here, you could also have a long. So let's see what it does. Okay, so here you would have got filled most likely. Now, because this sell-off is so damn strong, if you got filled down here, your stop loss is probably right below low a day. It's going to be very close. So your stop loss is going to be somewhere around 38,800. And I'll kind of show you. Let's see. This one here. So let's say we longed these little initial balance levels. Our stop loss would be anywhere. That's the lowest I would put it, because that gives you a 1.5 to 1. So if we're targeting POC as our first target, that's the lowest I would put my stop loss. And then we would also be targeting the value area high. Okay, let's just see if this trade is a winner or a loser. That would have scared you a little bit. That would have scared you. If you had your maximum stop loss, you would have almost got stopped out there. Let's let it play. There's your POC and there's your high. So there you go. This is a perfect example of trust the system, right? Trust the system. Don't get scared of watching the candles play out. Because like if you were watching that happen, you probably would have said, oh shit, I'm just going to close the trade. And you would have just screwed yourself out of a massive win. So that is a perfect example of trust the system. Both of your targets were hit. You had a little bit of drawdown. So based on drawdown, you would have gotten a 2 to 1 or a 3.2 to 1 based on drawdown. That's not a bad trade. It's a really good trade. All right, let's keep going. This actually just gave you a super aggressive buy if you were someone who was very aggressive. Let me go back a little bit. That happened a lot faster than I thought. Okay, so watch this level. Break, retrace, bounce. Break, retrace, bounce. Retrace again, and then bounce again. So what are we doing here? We're clearly shifting the value area high into support. Also, I didn't notice it gave you a trade down here as well. So if you didn't get that beautiful trade on the bottom, where you took the bid trade where you put your bids in, you could have gotten that retrace trade. Okay. Let's see if this one plays out. So this one, because there is no value area high above you, there is no POC above you, you have to target previous levels, right? Or Fibonacci. You can use Fibonacci as well. I showed you guys how to do that in the previous parts. So the key levels here are clearly the gap. So we have a gap here, and then we have this node right here. So if we were taking this trade, that's what we would be targeting. Now the gap is a little too close, so most likely you would be targeting the node. All right. So we would have been something like this. If you got a perfect trade, it would have been right on the level. Your target would have been somewhere in the zone. Let's just put it kind of in the middle. And then maximum stop loss would have been there, 1.5 to 1. So that's your maximum stop. You could have put it closer as well. So let's just say you put the maximum stop in, and let's see if you would have won this trade or lost this trade. Okay, so depending on where you would have put your target, you might have got filled there, probably not. Let's see. That actually just barely missed your stop loss, so you'd still be in this trade. Are we live? I think we actually just caught up. We did, I think. Okay, we just caught up. So this trade would have been a little scary, actually. If you would have gotten a perfect fill, you would have almost got stopped out twice, but you'd still be in the trade. And depending on where you put your target, you could have got filled on your target, but only if you targeted the very bottom of that node. So once again, there's a lot of ifs, right? If this, if that, if this. Those things I can't teach you. That's all intuition. It's all about who you are as a trader. Are you going for the higher profit? Are you being conservative and putting it as close as as you possibly can to the node? Stuff like that, I can't really teach you. But yeah, so now we are live. Notice how it did not like that gap. You see that reaction to the gap? It did not like that gap at all. So that gap is acting as a massive rejection point. So very bearish on that gap. What else can we cover here now that we are live? So really nothing has changed. We have another node right here. So we have another node forming right here. This one has kind of come down a little bit. So this node is more like this. And then we have a gap above us, marked out with the blue line. And everything else is pretty much the same. Our value area has shifted a little bit. This is still a very balanced day. This is almost perfectly balanced. The only thing that is not perfectly balanced about this day is that gap right there. How do I define nodes? It's just like when the volume profile builds up like this. When it's building these peaks, these are nodes, right? Do you have paid TradingView? Yes, you have to have paid TradingView to use their volume profile. But okay, so let me... Yeah, I recognize your name, man. I appreciate you watching for such a long time. I'm going to delete everything. So I know today was a pretty wild session. I'm going to delete everything. And I'm going to give you the current levels and how you could read Bitcoin based on the profile that we're seeing right now. So we have the value area high, the value area low, the POC. We have a node right here. We have a node right here. And then we have a node right here. And then we have a little gap right here. Let me make these black. Color coding is your friend, guys. For this style of trading, you want to be color coding stuff for sure. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so these are all our important levels. So if we were looking at today, and we were asking ourselves, how are we going to trade this? What would we say? Today is almost perfectly balanced. So what is our goal? Our goal is to buy the lows or sell the highs. Our goal is to sell the nodes, sell the retrace of the value area high, or buy the nodes and buy the retrace of the value area low. That's it. That's our goal. There's nothing else. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Everything in between this level and this level is chop. And you want to try to avoid trading in between there. Scalping is way too hard for the average trader. I agree, man. Scalping is definitely not for everybody. 100%. I definitely agree. Yeah, and if we lose the value area low and then use it as resistance, we are looking to sell this lower. And where are we going to sell it to? We're going to sell it to our previous levels. Okay? And if we break out here and use this as support, we're going to buy this up to our previous levels. Do we have any previous levels? I don't think we do for a long, long time. So let's do... I don't know if I'll be able to grab any levels. Let's actually grab... Here, I'll show you how to do this. I don't know if it will give it to me on a 1 hour. Let's see. I'm going to go back very far. Okay, here we go. Okay, so our current price is around 40,000, right? And if we break out of this area, we need to have some levels to target, right? So then we could look at the days that were happening above our current level. So we have like this day right here. Where do we start? We start right here. And then we go all the way to right there. So what we can do... Actually, this is easier. Let me do it this way. That's where we start. This is where we close. You can use the fixed range volume profile. We can make our own volume profile with that level. So then we can go ahead and grab our value area high, our value area low, grab the POC. And then if we want to be really exact, we could grab like this node here as well. Okay. So now we have some levels that we can target if we break out of this range. So if we break out of like 40,500, our next major target is around 43. And then we also have one around like 44. And then we have a node around 45, right? That's just like a very rugged way to do that. The only reason it's so hard to do is because we have not tested that area in so long. Typically, you will have levels a lot closer, but because we have not tested that area since way back here, we don't have any levels until we get way back into May. But all right, unless you guys have any volume profile related questions, that is it for this part 3. Let me catch up with chat before we close it down. Could you please share your settings for VPSV? Yeah. My settings are number of rows, 100, total volume, 70 as the value area volume. I show the volume profile, 30%, placement left, black, black, pink, pink. POC is on. I do not use the developing area, and then I put this to 0. Yeah, the Cupra, you asked the same question. It's 100. My row size is 100. Boss said, may I ask a question about taking profits? How do you plan the amount of take profits? Example, first target selling 20%, second target 30%. So with volume profile trading, very often most of the trades are only going to have 2 targets. So you basically can close half and half. Pretty much all the techniques that I'm showing you only have 2 targets. The only exception would be if you're using Fibonacci targets. And then even then you only have really 2 zones. So for the most part, you're going to be going half and half. Yeah, Jazz. I know you asked that question yesterday. I'm going to be going over that probably tomorrow, but I'll give you a little rundown today as well. Tomorrow, I'm going to be showing how to use ES and NASDAQ, which are futures. They have volume profiles that run basically 24/7. They've got a few little closes. I'm going to be showing how to use that in your opening trading. The reason I'm waiting until the end of the week is that's kind of a little bit more advanced. So I wanted to wait towards like the end of this this series. But yeah, I'll go over that real quick. I'll give you guys like a little intro to kind of what we're going to be doing tomorrow. So when I trade ES and NASDAQ, I prefer to use the 30-minute time frame. So I like to use the 30-minute profile. That's the one that I've found the most success with. It just forms the best profile, and it has the best price action, I think. A lot of the order flow guys use the 30-minute as well. But, so let's say, where is the opening candle? The opening candle is here. Okay, so here's 9:30 to where we are now. This is today's profile, right? This is today's profile if we use the entire session, including the pre-market session. Okay, so this is today's with pre-market, and then finally this. Oh, hold on, I might have taken the wrong one. What day am I on? What day is it today? Today's the 28th. Where is the pre-market? Oh, that's it. Okay. Sorry, so here it is, all the way until where we started today, which is right here. This is just the pre-market session. Okay, so we have the pre-market session, we have today's session, today's open session, and then we have today's session with the pre-market included. Okay, so typically what I do is I'll grab the pre-market session. We'll grab the value area low. We'll grab the value area high. We'll grab the POC. And then we'll get rid of that. And that becomes pretty much our initial balance. So instead of taking the first hour of the day for the initial balance, you're looking at the pre-market session as your initial balance. You can still take the initial balance on SPY and Qs, but like when you're futures trading, you want to pay attention to the pre-market session because that kind of is your initial balance, right? So take those levels, just the pre-market, not the current session. And then when your current session starts to build and starts to form, pay attention to how the current session is reacting to the pre-market. So, for example, if we looked at today's session compared to the pre-market, what happened? The value area high shifted lower. The POC stayed exactly the same. And the value area low shifted lower. So a little bit of weakness today compared to the pre-market session, right? Another thing that we could look for is if this is the pre-market value area high, and then our day, where did we open? We opened right here. So we clearly opened weak. Let me get rid of this. we clearly opened weak because look at what it did. It opened up and it failed the pre-market value area high instantly. Right? So that's pretty weak. But then look at where it started to bounce. You started to bounce and recover around the pre-market value area low. So it wasn't exactly weak, it was just balancing. You're kind of balancing out. If it was very strong, it would have broken the pre-market value area high and used it as support and then pushed higher. If it was very weak, it would have done the opposite, right? So that's how I use the pre-market session. That's mainly on futures. And I'm going to go over that more in depth either tomorrow or Friday for our part 4 or our part 5. He said, I noticed if the market opens below the POC of pre-market, it will be bearish for most of the time, unless it goes back above the POC and hold it. Then we could see a big move above. Yeah, exactly, Jazz. Exactly. Yeah. So, like, if the current session is losing the most important levels of the pre-market session, that's pretty weak, right? But all right, guys, we hit our max on this video. We're like an hour and a half. I'm trying to keep these around an hour. So today and yesterday we kind of went over a little bit. Once again, if you guys are coming into the live stream, this is part 3 of our 5-part How to Trade Volume Profile series. Make sure you guys hit that like button if you guys like the content. Make sure to subscribe. We have 2 more parts coming. Part 4 tomorrow, part 5 on Friday. Make sure if you haven't watched part 1 and 2, go do that now. I also have a How to Trade Volume Profile video, which is basically like the introduction to this entire series. Okay, so make sure if you guys like this content to go back and watch all of those videos. Make sure to subscribe if you guys are new. I do stream 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. So I will be streaming again tomorrow for How to Trade Volume Profile part 4. But all right, guys, you guys have been awesome. I appreciate you guys being here. I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace out, guys.